joke is also, obviously, mine. There were many problems along the way, most of them literary, some of them urgently practical. When we returned from India, I was broke. The novel in my head was clearly going to be long and strange and take quite a while to write, and in the meanwhile, I had no money. As a result, I was forced back into the world of advertising. Before we left, I had worked for a year or so as a copywriter at the London office of the Ogilvy and Mather Agency, whose founder, David Ogilvy, immortally instructed us that the consumer is not a moron, she is your wife, and whose creative director and my boss was Dan Ellerington, a man of rumoured Romanian origins, with a command of English that was, let us say, eccentric, so that, according to mirthful company legend, he once had to be forcibly restrained from presenting to the Milk Marketing Board a successor campaign to the famous "Drink a pint of milk a day," which would be based on the amazing, the positively Romanian slogan, "Milk goes down like a dose of salts." In those less hard-nosed times, Ogilvy's was prepared to employ a few oddball creative people on a part-time basis, and I managed to persuade them to rehire me as one of that happy breed. I worked 2 or 3 days a week, essentially job-sharing with another part-timer, the writer Jonathan Gaythorne Hardy, author of The Rise and Fall of the British Nanny. On Friday nights I would come home to Kentish Town from the agency's offices near Waterloo Bridge, take a long hot bath, wash the week's commerce away, and emerge, or so I told myself, as a novelist. As I look back, I feel a touch of pride at my younger self's dedication to literature, which gave him the strength of mind to resist the blandishments of the enemies of promise. The sirens of Adland sang sweetly and seductively, but I thought of Odysseus lashing himself to the mast of his ship, and somehow stayed on course. Still, advertising taught me discipline, forcing me to learn how to get on with whatever task needed getting on with, and ever since those days I have treated my writing simply as a job to be done, refusing myself most luxuries of artistic temperament. And it was at my desk at Ogilvy's that I remember becoming worried that I didn't know what my new novel was to be called. I took several hours off from the important work of coming up with campaigns for fresh cream cakes, naughty but nice, Aero chocolate bars, Irresistible, and the Daily Mirror newspaper, "Look into the mirror tomorrow, you'll like what you see," to solve the problem. In the end, I had 2 titles, and I couldn't choose between them: Midnight's Children and Children of Midnight. I typed them, one after the other, over and over, and then, all at once, I understood there was no contest, that Children of Midnight was a banal title, and Midnight's Children a good one. To know the title was also to understand the book better, and after that it became easier, a little easier, to write. I have written and spoken elsewhere about my debt to the oral narrative traditions of India, also to those great Indian novelists Jane Austen and Charles Dickens. Austen for her portraits of brilliant women caged by the social convention of their time, women whose Indian counterparts I knew well. Dickens for his great, rotting, Bombay-like city, and his ability to root his larger-than-life characters and surrealist imagery in a sharply observed, almost hyper-realistic background, out of which the comic and fantastic elements of his work seemed to grow organically, becoming intensifications of, and not escapes from, the real world. I have probably said enough, too, about my interest in creating a literary idiolect that allowed the rhythms and thought patterns of Indian languages to blend with the idiosyncrasies of Hinglish and Bombaya, the polyglot street slang of Bombay. The novel's interest in the slippages and distortions of memory will also, I think, be evident enough to the reader. This may, however, be an appropriate moment to give thanks to the original people from whom my fictional characters sprang: my family, my ayah, Miss Mary Menezes, and my childhood friends. My father was so angry about the character of Ahmed Sinai that he refused to speak to me for many months. Then he decided to forgive me, which annoyed me so much that for several more months I refused to speak to him. I had been more worried about my mother's reaction to the book, but she immediately understood that it was just a story. Saleem isn't you, Amina isn't me, they're all just characters, thus demonstrating that her level head was a lot more use to her than my father's Cambridge University education in English literature was to him.